Okay, in this video we're going to talk about multi-subs again, and we're going to deal with a multi-sub on a tank chassis. So this is kind of the normal situation that this project tends to go. What I'm going to do, I'm going to select the tank chassis itself, and I'm going to isolate this just so I can only work on the tank chassis here. It'll make things a little bit easier. And I'm going to click around here real quick and see what I have to work with. I'm checking to see what the groups are here and how I can get a hold of them. Okay, so I've got an element here, and each of these little lattice pieces looks to be a separate element. Okay, I'll keep that in mind as I work with it. And I'm in editable poly mode for this, and I'm going to be using polygons. So what we're going to do, the first thing I'm going to do is grab all the polygons in this piece. And I'm going to make sure that everything has a ID associated with it for our multi-sub object. Now we've done this in a tutorial already, so that part's not anything new. I'm going to scroll down here, and I'm going to set the ID under Polygon Properties, Set ID. Remember, it's always right above the smoothing groups. And I'm going to set the ID to 1 on everything in this piece. Now I'm going to go back in using Select, and I'm going to, holding down Control, I'm going to select all these top pieces, and I'm going to make that ID 2. What I'm looking at is oh, I see. Okay. I was thrown off by this little fender piece over here. So that's going to be 2. So 2 is the top piece, and everything else right now is labeled 1. So does that make sense so far? And we're going to call these side pieces here, holding down Control and left clicking. Grab the other side. And I think, if I remember how this tank is built, yeah, I've got some little extra pieces over here. And that's going to be ID 3. So ID 3 is the side, this is the top, everything else is the number 1 that I just named it. Now at this point it can start to be a little confusing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hop over to my material editor. I'm going to make a shader, a multi-sub object. We can just discard the old material in this case. Now ID 1 is the whole body at this case. I'm going to leave that one alone. ID 2 was the front. So I'm going to click on this, and I'm going to call this front. And now you'll see when I hop out, that one's called front. ID 3 was the sides. So this is going to be sides. Hop back out, so front and sides. I don't have an ID 4 yet. And I'm not going to make a ton of IDs because I don't want to take a ton of time here. I think I'm going to make, let's make ID 4 the undersides here. That's probably our best bet. Holding down Control. There we go. We'll hop over. I don't have to grab all of them at once either. I can call this 4, hit Enter at this point, and then go around to the other side. Probably a little easier that way. And we'll grab these guys. All of them. Yeah. And this one's going to be 4 too. Okay, so 4, we'll call the, whoops, I got some here that I shouldn't have gotten. If this happens, just select the polygons that you got by mistake. You can see those are called 4. And actually, these here should still be 1. No. Now I confused myself. That's 2. Okay. And this one here is a side. It's supposed to be 3. Okay. And I mislabeled this one. This is top, not front. Okay. That'll make more sense. And then ID 4, this one's going to be called undersides, because that's kind of the secondary side panel. And ID 1 now I can call the body. Alright, I think I'm going to leave it like that. So I only need 4 here, because I only made 4 multi-subs. There we go. And I'm going to color these bright colors, so when I test it, I'll know if everything is where it's supposed to be. There we go. I'm going to turn off my sub-object, drag this over. You can rename it. I'm going to rename this tank body. And we'll take a quick look around, make sure everything got the right ID on it. That looks about right. No mistakes. You can see the ones I made a mistake on are fixed now. And I'm going to close this for the time being. Okay, now we've got everything in place, except we don't have any textures and we don't have any mapping at this point. So I'm going to apply mapping to the entire object. I'm going to go to UVW map, and I'm going to apply box mapping to the whole object. That should get me close to what I'm after, and then I can fine-tune it later. So it's pretty close to a box. I think that'll work for the time being, and then we'll fine-tune it. Now I'm going to collapse all of this down, because I'm not going to change that mapping anyways at that level, so that will work. Okay, and I'm going to go back to my material editor now, and then go into each of these materials, go to maps, go to diffuse color, and bitmap. And then I'm going to go to the folder that I got this file out of, and for all of you that will be the week 5 folder. And in the week 5 folder there are some bitmaps in there that I put in there for you to play with, and they're all called metal. So I'm going to open those up, put that on there. You can see that I've got that metal now on the front and on the underside. That's this one. We'll go up the stack. You can drop this down and go up the stack here, or you can hit this button here. This button goes up the stack as well. You can see there's our metal. Go back down, bitmap. For this one, I'm going to choose something a little bit brighter just so it shows up. There we go. That's our top piece. I'm going to choose this one, I think. Yeah, that's pretty good. We'll go up. Here's another trick. If you're just applying a diffuse texture, which is all we've been doing, you can apply it right in this little slot here. I'll do it on this last one. If I click here, go straight to bitmap, I can actually save one click out of the whole thing. And you never know, maybe that'll come in handy. Click on this, and now I've got that piece under there, except that looks a lot like the top, so I'm going to change it. How about this one? That's a little bit better. Okay. And we'll hop back up. So you can see there's my multi-sub object. I'm going to go into each of these and ramp the specularity up a little bit so that it looks a little more tank-like. If the specularity is a little different on each one, that just means that each object will react differently. This one there, there. This one. We'll make this one pretty shiny. There we go. Okay, and now if I render this, I don't have any lights in the scene, so the specularity isn't going to do too much. But there we go. Clear that. Clear all that stuff. We're using a ray trace setting in this that I totally forgot about. There we go. So we've got all of our materials set up in there. And Now I'm going to poke around here and see if anything needs any fine tuning. Remember, we can go down to our sub-object here. We could select different pieces of this and map it differently. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to add a grill piece onto the front of this. And I'm going to have to make a new multi-sub-object material to do that. So this is going to be 5. And you can see as soon as I make it 5, I'm going to hop over here, go up to the top of my stack. I don't have a 5, so I need to make a 5. There we go. You can see it turns gray. If I make this any other color, it's going to turn that color until I get a map on it. And for this one, I'm going to pick something a little bit more specific as my bitmap, and I gave you a few more specific ones as well in here. I got to drop this down to all files. I think they were Targas, yep. And I gave you these detail pieces that you can play with. I think I'm going to use this piece here. I'm going to open that. You can see it's like a grill piece. And now it's on there. Now that particular piece, that's not how I want it to look. So I'm going to have to get in there and adjust it. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to get out of shade selected mode. So when I grab these now, they're not solid red. They're just the outlined red. Oops, missed a row down here. There we go. And I'm going to, while I'm in sub-object mode, that part's important, so sub-object mode, I'm going to apply a UVW map to that. Now I'm going to remap this, and I think I want planar, but I need it on the right plane, and I can't figure out which plane. I think that's what I want. That's the X. I think I want Y. Do I want Y? No, I want X. Yeah, that looks right. I'm going to drop this down to Gizmo. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to move the gizmo out here where I can see it. You can see it's projecting right on there. But it's not quite where I want it to be. And it's not aligned how I want it to be. So what I'm going to do is rotate this gizmo. And you can see down here, if I just type in 90 degrees, it's going to rotate that 90 degrees. So that's what I want. And then I can play with the length, the width, and the height here. I'm going to stretch it out a little bit. Let's stretch it up that way, I think. The height's not going to help me on this, but I'm going to move this down, I think, right about there. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to stretch it and keep moving it until the top and the bottom line up. I'm going to look at it straight on here. And I'm going to get out of edged faces so that you can see what I'm doing. I'll zoom in here. And I'm just going to keep moving that up. Move this down. There we go. There we go. See how that's just going to line up with the top and the bottom. I like the way that looks, I think. So now I have that nice texture map on the front of my tank. There we go. This part here is getting a little stretched as well. So I'm going to jump out of this, fold this guy back up, and I'm going to add my edit poly modifier on top. And I'm going to go back to edged faces so I can see what I'm grabbing. There we go. 1, 2. There we go. I think I got them all. And in this case, I'm going to put another UV mapping on top of that. UVW map, sorry. And see how that's a little bit better, but it's not quite matching, matching up, gotta go to Gizmo, with my texture on top. There we go. I missed this piece here. I'm missing a piece there. I'm going to jump back over to my shaded faces. Okay, we've got them all this time. And now apply that UV map so that I've got it right. There we go, much better. Get the right axis, there we go. And we're just going to make it bigger or smaller depending on what we're aiming at. Drop this down, grab the gizmo. You can move it out here where you can see it. And I think it's going to need to be a little bit wider. There we go. And it's going to need to be mapped straight on. See, at that angle. That's a much better angle for that piece. There we go. And I think I'm looking at this trying to figure out if there's anything else I want to do. This top piece needs to be tiled down a little bit, I think. So I'm going to add one more edit poly. I'm going to grab these pieces here. I can tell I missed one. There we go. Just wasn't sure which ones I missed. Okay, looking around, making sure I didn't grab anything by accident. Okay. Hop back over here, shade selected faces, turn that back off. And we'll add a UVW map. There we go. We want planar on this guy, but that'll be it. I'm going to hit fit just to get it started in the right spot. And in this case, I'm going to move the gizmo up for no other reason than you can just see it better. And I'm just going to, well, since we're dealing with gizmos, I'll shrink it down, and I'll shrink it down this way. And see how that's collapsing down the surface? I could tile it as well. There we go. I could have tiled it, but I think that works. And I'm going to do a quick render here. By the way, F9 also does a quick render, but I can't hit F9 on my computer because that's my recording program. So if I hit F9, bad things will happen. So you can hit F9 on your computer. So there's my tank body with many different textures on it. I'm going to get out of isolation mode. And you can see that if I was to continue doing that, ignore this, by the way. This was something I was playing with beforehand. And it looks like it's going to render very, very slowly. There we go. There we go. So there's my texture. That's not a bad texture, and I could continue with it. But that's a multi-sub-object used on the tank, so building on our texturing options. Remember it's there, and remember to use those gizmos and to make sure that all the mapping looks nice. Don't just throw it on and let it stretch or have it scale wrong.